Mr. Nanda Kishore Reddy is joining us. He's the MD of APTS Group, CEO of Beta APTS.
Yes, welcome to you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, you are looking at the current panelists. The future of electronics in the city of Visakhapatnam is going to grow brighter as the panelists are looking bigger, brighter here. We are waiting here to know more about the potential expansion and the upscaling of electronic sector in the city of Visakhapatnam. Over to the moderator of the session, Ms. Uma Reddy garu. Heartiest welcome. It's on the stage. Okay. Yes, console, can we have all the three mics onto the stage? Ma'am, we'll open the session for Q&A post 4 p.m. Uma Reddy ma'am, we'll open the session for Q&A post 4 p.m. It's 3 p.m. right now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen who have arrived here after a great lunch. I hope the panel will be able to keep us all awake, and I'm sure it will from the people that I know here. So first and foremost, thank you to both the World Trade Center and Hans Bizzbuzz for having invited us. We are three of us from Bangalore, two of you from Telangana, from Hyderabad. You're from Visakhapatnam? Vijayawada, Andhra Pradesh. Here, and we are actually looking forward to a good interactive session. The more questions you ask the panelists, the more vibrant and a discussion it would be. We had a great lunch, and when we were talking about it, we were wondering what is it that we're going to discuss this session, you know, that you have. But I'm going to request each of the panelists to introduce themselves with their intros, because I don't have it here with me. So to actually start with, you know, I personally run a business manufacturing transformers for over 3.5 decades. I started my business in the 80s, when I don't think I knew the spelling of the word entrepreneurship at all, right? And we've seen, and nor did we know anything much about a digital economy. It was more an analog economy at that point of time. Everything was analog. And little did we realize, you know, the only digital thing that came about was those little clocks with a digital, you know, number on it, and that was a sea change then. But over the 3.5 decades, we've seen the electronic sector really grow. And personally, I feel I've been part of a great journey. I've enjoyed it. I'm in the electronics manufacturing sector, and we've seen from analog to digital, and now, of course, more with AI and, you know, a lot of machine learning, deep learning that's happening, embedded in electronics. Everything is becoming more and more smart and, you know, a smarter technology. And with it, the projections of the government of India and the state governments as to what is in it for us in that large pie, right? So we've, you know, we've known about 2020, the electronics manufacturing sector is supposed to be a $400 billion. We are at presently about $125 billion. But, you know, there is a projection, and how much out of that $400 billion can each of the electronic sectors capture? And we now know that the Andhra Pradesh government has come out with an amazing policy, the 2021 to 24 electronic policy. And when you look at the electronic manufacturing policy, we look at it in terms of 4 particular areas. We talk about R&D, which is very important for product development. We talk about electronic manufacturing, the manufacturing space. There's another larger area where the ecosystem comes into being, which is the ease of doing business. And that's very important. And we know that Andhra Pradesh is quite high on the ranking in ease of doing business. And that kind of attracts both in terms of investments and infrastructure and enterprises together. And we talk about component manufacturing and the whole process which builds up a large number of employment generation. And that's an area that the government is also very focused on. So being in Vizag, it's been very nostalgic for me. I've been there in my holidays when I was in school and college. Basically, I'm from Bangalore. But it always brings about the beach road, and this place brings about a lot of memories. And said, hey, it's so lovely to see, and it's going to be much more nicer to see an electronic manufacturing, setup, either coming in Visakhapatnam, because we do know that there is an EMC in Sri City in Tirupati. We've also heard about the one that is coming up in Kadapa. We also hear of it in Anantapur, which is closer to Bangalore for us. And it's good to see the clusters, growing and more. And we have both the state government here, which is supporting the initiatives for entrepreneurs to set up enterprises, and also the government of India, MeitY, coming up with a whole lot of schemes that supports electronic industry growth. Now with this background, we have with us a panel of speakers. We have Mr. Nanda Kishore Reddy from the government, from APITA, right? APITA, who is going to talk about largely the ecosystem. To my right is a very young entrepreneur, is in a space which is space. So it's Dhruva Space. Sanjay has an excellent business in space technology, and I'm going to ask him to then talk about his own story. We have Mr. Sanjeev Keskar, who's MD of Arvind, CEO of Arvind Consultancy, and he himself has been, we have music for our background. He's going to cheer us up more. So he's been the MD of Arrow Electronics and has been macro, if there is somebody whom I would call a guru in electronic manufacturing, I would go to Sanjeev Keskar. And that's the kind of information that he has and he talks about. And then we have Poornima Shenoy, who has an expertise in many areas, from Dix on board, but also in skills, training, and the needs and resources that are needed for an electronic sector to grow. So I will start my first question to Mr. Nanda Kishore Reddy, because I always believe that it's the ecosystem that is required for any electronic manufacturing, for that matter, any business to set up. And that actually kind of ignites and provides a leverage to take it wherever it is. So how do you perceive in this 2021-24 policy that you have? Where do you see electronics manufacturing going? What is the kind of ecosystem that is required for it? And what are the steps that the Andhra Pradesh government is taking?
Thank you. See, to answer your question, madam, electronics manufacturing or electronic component manufacturing, so is a fight not between the states but between the countries. So if you see that, so we have cutthroat competition between other electronic manufacturing giants like China, Taiwan, Vietnam. So first our country needs to compete with these other countries. So if somebody here is thinking that importing an electronic item is cheaper when we import from either of these three countries rather than manufacturing here, then definitely electronic manufacturing, there won't be any growth within this country. Obviously, it is at the end of the day, it is a business. So first we need to erase, so whatever differences or whatever enablers that those countries are having, but our country is not having, these things. To a certain extent, yes, in the last 2-3 years, central government has definitely thought through, and they have come up with excellent policies like PLI, and then for your infrastructure thing, EMC2 scheme, and then to encourage component manufacturers, they have come up with specs. So certain kind of policies they made, and to certain extent that has eased out our electronic manufacturing industry. But still some feel like so posing import duties on the raw materials is a problem. That is when we are importing from different countries raw materials. And this border sharing clause, it cuts both the ways. So since actually we don't have electronic giants manufacturing in that economies of scale when compared to China. So those things are there, but definitely we have strides. Our central government has taken steps to ease out that competition between countries. Now coming to the states. Once these electronic companies can manufacture here, then there is a cutthroat competition between the states. Every state is competing with each other with whatever policies they have, whatever incentives they are giving, and there are a host of incentives and everything. Here, what is the advantage of Andhra Pradesh? There are a couple of things. I'll come one by one. One is geographical. Suppose Andhra Pradesh has a distinct geographical feature that we have 6 major ports here and 6 airports, out of which 3 are international. So to export these items, that logistics cost to the companies is the least when compared to any other state. So once the goods are manufactured here, to exports cost, the logistic costs will come down drastically. That is one, because of its distinct geographical nature of the state. Second thing, already is there an ecosystem. If you see the electronic manufacturing altogether, so we can divide like one, assemblers are there, assembly giants are there, then component manufacturers are there. Then if you go up the ladder, then again fab manufacturers, the semiconductor manufacturing, chip level designing, so all these sectors. In Andhra Pradesh, we do have the existing clusters. Like when I say clusters, actually Andhra Pradesh boasts of having the world's largest original equipment manufacturer, that is Foxconn, is there within Andhra Pradesh. And at the same time, world's largest original design manufacturer, Wingtech, is also having its base in Andhra Pradesh. So I mean to say, you have the largest design segment company there, you have largest assembly segment company there. Apart from, I am not saying other companies are any less to that. Like we do have, Dixon is there, then Daikin, Carbon, Celcon, Micromax is not there. Lava, to certain extent, they have to start the manufacturing. See, if you see the consumer electronics, we have giants, either Dixon or Daikin, everybody is there. In mobile manufacturing sectors, yes, definitely Wingtech, and then Dixon into mobile manufacturing, Foxconn into that, Carbon into that, UTNPL is there. And we have one advantage, like cell phone cameras, like Sunny Oppo is the largest second unit after China is in Andhra Pradesh. So that way, if you see in terms of company-wise this thing, we have a Korean cluster, we have a Japanese cluster in Sri City, and we have Taiwanese cluster within the state. So that is the main attraction. If somebody from their country has come and they are doing business within Andhra Pradesh for past many years, and that itself is an incentive to invest by the other companies. So this is the ecosystem part I talk about. Next thing is from the government side. What are the incentives or what are the provisions that the government of Andhra Pradesh is rolling out for electronic industry? One is creating infrastructure. in electronic industry, for that matter, any other industry, but electronic industry being a manufacturing sector, what we thought is actually we'll create a clusters, like electronic manufacturing clusters, where government will identify a certain piece of land and government will develop entire land with internal roads or internal drainage and internal power to the doorsteps of the companies and water to the doorsteps of the companies. And we are also building ready-made factory build sheds, so that actually if any company wants to come and start their shop immediately, so they can lease out that shed and they can start the operations then and there. So that way, physical infrastructure part is being taken care. So we have 4 such electronic manufacturing clusters, the highest by any state government within the country. Second thing, so what incentives that our government of Andhra Pradesh is giving for the companies to invest in the state of Andhra Pradesh? See, just now I mentioned government of India has come up with certain schemes like PLI, production linked incentives for the electronic manufacturing assemblers basically. And we do have different clusters, like Andhra Pradesh government is also giving PLI scheme apart over and above what central government is giving. So we are also giving 100% PLI in electronic manufacturing cluster Koparthi, that is near Kadapa, where you see like the cheapest labor rates are there and cheapest power is there when you compare to any other states, power rate per unit I am talking about, water prices per KL. See, we thought through about this industry as a whole. So to sustain this industry, we need to have what should we do from the government side? What do we do? Like anyway we are creating clusters and anyway there is an ecosystem. From the incentive side we are creating. And second thing is process reforms, ease of doing business. That in Andhra Pradesh actually boasts of having #1 rank for the consecutively for the last 3 years in ease of doing business rankings. So, and we do have single window mechanism where after a certain period, like 21 days exactly. So if if you don't get any permissions from, there are different departments to start a manufacturing unit. So if you don't get the permission, after 21 days, those permissions are deemed to be given. So it's kind of those kind of things actually we have already kept in place, like process reforms are there, incentives are there, infrastructure is there, ecosystem is there, and overall skilling. So electronics is what skill incentive sector, basically in assembling unit. So there, with our skilling units and skill centers, actually we are going to village level, and actually we are tying up with these companies, like actually from the 10th class or from the 12th class. It is 95% in these electronic manufacturing cluster are women, working women actually basically in these companies. So we are tying up directly with them, and then we are only skilling them, so from the government side, and bringing them to the company so that actually if they want they can recruit, otherwise they are going to reskilling. This process goes on continuous. So likewise actually entire 360-degree approach we have taken, and that is bearing the fruits. Since actually EMC Koparthi we have started recently in December 23rd actually. So we did get giant companies, 6 giant companies within this short span of time, and from June actually one of them are starting manufacturing. So that is the kind of ecosystem, and that is kind of EODB, ease of doing business and process reforms that the state of Andhra Pradesh has brought in.
Thank you, Mr. Nanda Kishore Reddy garu, because I think he's really covered the whole gamut of what is required for the electronic industry to survive and grow in a certain location. Like to get into the details of it, but I'll do that in the next question. I will hold my thought about what kind of value addition that is needed at an industry for growth level. I will set the tone with all the panelists speaking about their area of expertise and their thoughts, and then we'll move on to the second round of questions. So I'll now move to Mr. Sanjeev Keskar, who has been with the electronic industry at a much micro level with Arrow Electronics, understanding what industry needs are, especially in the electronic and the ESDM sector in particular. So I really would like you to share what's really the, as an entrepreneur, we have an ecosystem and I say I can set up the business. But what is the trend? Where do I start my business? Is this an area that I need to? I mean, those are the questions most entrepreneurs have. So I'd like you to share your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Uma. Good afternoon, everyone. In the month of January, Ministry of Electronics and IT, they come up with a report. It's called Sustainable Electronics Manufacturing and Export by 2026. As per that report, electronics market in India, manufacturing in India, which was at $120 billion last year, that is going to grow to $300 billion by 25-26. Now, if we analyze last year, $120 billion, $40 billion worth of finished good imports were there, and $80 billion worth of domestic manufacturing was there in electronics manufacturing. And now we intend to reach to $300 billion in next 5 years.
Keep it up a little bit.
Hello?
Because
Sorry.
to be louder than that music.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so we are going to be $300 billion in electronics manufacturing as per that report by Ministry of Electronics and IT. If we add electronics design plus component manufacturing to this electronics product manufacturing, then the total electronics industry, ESDM, what we call it, is going to be almost $400 billion by 2026. So it is going to be one of the very prominent and important industry, even from the overall India economy point of view. Means if we are talking about $5 trillion economy by 26, and if electronics is going to be $400 billion, we are going to be almost 8% of our GDP, which is currently electronics is less than 4%. Secondly, from the national security point of view, this sector is very, very important. All your power grids or energy sector, telecommunication networking sector, or even defense electronics, we have to be Atmanirbhar for all these technologies. If we import our grid technology from any neighboring country, then next wars are not going to be on the field. If your power grid is controlled by someone else, then you are at a deep trouble. So, from the national security point of view, this sector is very, very important. Third point is about job creation. This sector has an opportunity to create 2 million jobs in next 5 years. And our youngsters, our engineers definitely need those jobs. What is challenged today? Definitely the consumption story of India for electronics is very strong. Everyone is using smartphone, laptops, and all sort of home appliances. 5G network is going to be there moving forward. But the biggest challenge for electronics industry today is about local value addition. Earlier, we were importing more than 50% of electronics, but with the production link incentive scheme and other schemes launched by Ministry of Electronics, now the manufacturing has grown, but it is just a EMS activity what we are doing. People are getting CKD kit from any global company and just doing the assembly work in India. Means we are very proud that we are manufacturing so many mobile phones now in India, but in a $100 mobile phone, India gets only $10 because complete kit comes from China or somewhere else, and we are just doing the assembly work in India. So the biggest challenge for electronics industry today is about value addition and how we can really improve a high value added manufacturing ecosystem. That should be the point which all of us needs to be think and address. Opportunity is huge. It is going to be $400 billion. But if we continue at 10 to 15% value addition, then our import dependency on component, import dependency on technology is still going to be very high. So we need to focus on creating IP and technology. We have to focus on creating component manufacturing ecosystem. And I think that with recent policies, we are definitely going to achieve that. So it's a huge opportunity.
I completely agree with you, Sanjeev, because personally I used to manufacture transformers. In the 90s, we had some very good business of transformer manufacturing, component sector. Suddenly, in 90s, it started going out because most companies were started importing CKD kits kits and modules were replacing transformers per se. And we saw that largely in the SMPS. There was a time when SMPS was being built and then SMPS was being imported because they were all coming in with zero duty. But now again, I see a larger rise. Thanks to the pandemic, thanks to China being China, thanks to the Ukraine war, thanks to companies looking at Atmanirbhar within the country, they want to now get into manufacturing within India. So there is a larger seek and a larger ask for products. So this is definitely probably the best time to look at ESDM, and I'm glad that the government of Andhra Pradesh is really looking at, having this whole focus on the electronic manufacturing sector in Andhra Pradesh. So we've heard the government ecosystem. We've got Sanjeev to talk about the macro picture of the demand and the need and the market that is available. But we also need the skill sets, the people, the resources that will actually, bring in and ignite a larger number of enterprises. And I will now request Poornima Shenoy to share her thoughts on what can come out of this policy.
Thank you, Uma. I hope I'm going to be louder than that.
Yeah,
The
I'm
music
trying
next door.
to that. We need to
Thank you
beat-
to the organizers for having me and all of us here on this panel. So let me begin by telling you a story.
Closer.
Closer? Yeah. Okay. So in 2005, I just become the president of the India Semiconductor Association, and we were making one of our first few trips to Delhi. And in the ministry, I had a guy who told me, "ये आधा conductor क्या है? पूरा conductor के साथ काम क्यों नहीं करते हो?" Okay, from then to now, when we see the government policies at the national level, at the state level, and even the next year towns getting involved in electronics, it is so very encouraging, and it's been such a meaningful journey. So I had the opportunity to go through the AP. Do you want me to do something?
No, that's okay.
Yeah, okay. So I had the opportunity of going through the AP state electronics policy, which has been written with a great deal of macro perspective and plans on how it can be executed. There were three things that stood out for me, and this is what I call the 3S, which I would like to speak about. First thing is skills, and that is addressed in steps 3 and 5 in the policy. The second is the social infrastructure, that is addressed in step 5 under infrastructure. And the last is what I call innovation and startups, that is addressed in step 7 of the policy. It's great to have infrastructure, it's great to have investments, but if we don't have the right trained manpower for it, how are we going to run this business? Policy to chase startups, to make attractive schemes. You have 4 accelerators in the 4 electronics hubs of the state. But you need to attract people there, you need to get IP, grants, funding, talent to work out of there. So these are equally important. Rather than attracting only the big guys, how are you going to make them operational and scale up? So maybe further in this discussion we can address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Poornima. And I totally agree with you because, you know, there was a time when I wanted staff, we would get people with certain amount of resources, skills, and we would train them. Now it's not just getting people because job security is there, you know, to a large extent vis-a-vis earlier days. So people who want to apply for jobs are also looking for what kind of facilities that are there around them. You know, do they have the space? Do they have the social infrastructure which Poornima mentioned? Do they have other career opportunities when they're in a company? Can they find other career opportunities for growth, more training, more advanced training opportunities? So there is an aspirational level even at the operator level stuff. So I think, you know, times have changed and we really need to ensure that the whole gamut of that is also taken care of when we are looking at skill training and development. So I will pause from these various thoughts that we had in terms of what's been the growth, where are we, with the role model who's sitting next to me, okay? Sanjay is in a very unique space and in the space tech area and in the satellite manufacturing industry. So I'm not going to talk more about it. I will let Sanjay talk about Dhruva space. All the more because, you know, we always look at space as something which is really far, and it is. But to get into an arena at a very young age and to make such a successful career, over to Sanjay.
Yeah. Thank you, Uma. I think I'll just talk about our journey and then probably also touch upon how Andhra Pradesh can actually play a very important role to attract investments, talent, and serve the global needs from, probably Sriharikota. So let's first hear about Dhruva Space and what we do. I started building satellites when I was 19 years old. So one of the scientists from ISRO had reached out to our academic institution and said, we as students could actually build satellites. This was way back in 2009, 2010. I'm actually a product of that. 10 years, 15 years after my bachelor's, I'm today running India's first space technology startup. And this started from a university. So I would definitely encourage that Andhra Pradesh brings in a framework so that a couple of academic institutions in AP build and launch a student satellite. So India is known for two things, very, very popular, right? One is the IT industry. The second is the rocket program, right? Whenever an ISRO launch happens, everybody is glued to it. So from the early 60s until early 2000s, there were probably about 5,000 satellites launched. In the next decade, it is estimated that about 60,000 satellites will be launched. The market is estimated to be about $1 trillion by 2040. Now, let's look at how the existing ecosystem can actually tap into it. So you mentioned about design already existing, manufacturing already existing, the policy talking towards creation of sheds that will allow people to come in and start utilizing them. I would suggest that you go one step forward and also establish the additional infrastructure that can bring a lot of foreign companies and domestic startups into one place. Just to give you an example, India has launched probably about 350 satellites for foreign countries. Now, all these satellites at some point in time had come to Sriharikota. right? Today there are about 100 space tech startups in the country. I think a favorable framework to attract these startups to come to the state of Andhra Pradesh would be super helpful. Now let me address more from the audience perspective. If few of you are running electronic systems design and manufacturing companies, then here is the thing. Today a lot of satellites use commercial off-the-shelf components, which means that if you're a company that is already building strategic electronics, or if you're building, even COTS-based products, it's an entry for you to support the global requirements in the space sector. And I would urge you guys to look at space as a vertical for growing your business.
Thank you, Sanjay. I mean, in earlier space satellites, ISRO remained to that large PSU, something which we at the small manufacturing level never thought of. And here is a startup who's not only done it, made it, and is also encouraging and showing the kind of opportunity that is there in this area. And it's really interesting to get to hearing his story, for which you will need another panel session, or a separate one-on-one session with Sanjay. And I have another question as to why you went about it, but I will hold on and I will come back to you. But I will now reach out to Mr. Nanda Kishore Reddy and say yes. So every state in the country is trying to take a little bit of that pie. You see it now even with UP, of course Bangalore, Karnataka is well into it, not only in Bangalore, but we are spreading across the state. You see it in Gurgaon. So what would be the unique USP of Andhra Pradesh? One is, of course, you talked about ease of doing business, but what else do you think is primarily the catalyst to bring about a larger participation of enterprises in the electronic manufacturing sector? We do know that it brings about a lot of employment generation, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, and to please add your points on what Sanjay said as what else is needed for this industry.
Right. Thank you. So the USP. See, for even it is electronics or any other industry, so ultimately for a manufacturer or for a business unit, it is profit making is the main motto. At the end of the day, actually they will be looking at their books. So how to reduce this manufacturing cost is our motto. So that is what is entire our policies, entire our processes, everything is built into. See, reduction in cost of manufacturing comes through various modes. One is, as I said, actually ready-made infrastructure is being created so that there won't be any upfront cost on the industry to start the business. So that is one primary step. Second thing is, apart from whatever central government is giving, we have some attractive policy incentives added, where we are actually 100% of FCA, fixed capital investment. There is a possibility to get back entire 100% of fixed capital investment through PLI mode. So that means actually virtually there is a zero investment in a couple of years. So apart from creating this thing. And thirdly, so the necessities like power, water, land, all these things, how to make the cheapest. So those things actually well defined in this thing, you can check the rates and they are the least when compared to any other state. Fourth, you spoke about Noida, Gurgaon and all these things. There is a distinct advantage for the Andhra Pradesh. As I said earlier, there is a reduction in logistics cost. When something is manufactured in Noida and if they want to export it, they have to physically, like on road, they have to bring entire products to some near port, either Chennai or Krishnapatnam or any Vizag port, and they have to export it. where if that manufacturing happens here, so that entire cost is reduced. So that logistic cost we are taking about. Apart from this, there are interest subvention and everything. I don't want to mention what is there in our policy, because actually policy has been given to each one of the participant here. So this is the overall network that we are talking about. So how to make, and last but not the least is cost of labor. When you compare the labor cost across the states, so it is one of the, Andhra Pradesh is one of the cheapest states in India. So combining all these things, the cost of manufacturing will be least when compared to any other state in India when it is manufactured in Andhra Pradesh. And one more advantage I am saying is, like, you need not, suppose one component manufacturer is there, he need not export it to any assembler here, because actually the world's largest players are here only. From the government side, we make sure, like, actually if some assembler wants some component, then we can introduce them, this component manufacturer. This guy is manufacturing the unit that you require. So that will be win-win for both of them, right? The next door actually he is getting components. He need not import from any particular third-party country. So that way he will be making, he will be cutting down his costs. So these things actually we are, one way actually we are taken macro league, and second thing actually micro manner also we are hand-holding from APITA. So entire every industry. So this is where this is what is entire USP of Andhra Pradesh. And coming back to Mr. Sanjay's this thing. In fact, actually it is a pleasant discovery, in fact, I must say. See, recently, some 3 months back, we held such conclave in Vizag itself with our own defense, naval guys. That we did on a test mode, like actually since our entire naval base is here, so they must be needing whatever these electronic components, chipsets or whatever, anything, they must be needing it. So let us have one tie-up. We just tried, but to our surprise actually, they are looking for some partner to partner with. Under Atmanirbhar Bharat, actually every thing that defense guys told me, whatever is required for the defense till date, most of them have been imported to Vizag. Whereas our own MSMEs can manufacture them here. So that way, actually next month actually we are doing again second this thing where we are innovating companies to showcase their talent, so that actually if they are selected, they can do it for defense itself. So that is one area opened for the state of Andhra Pradesh, and this is the second. Obviously our own Shriyarukota is there. Yes, definitely Sanjay, thank you so much. This is our second area of interest. So we thought of looking at some other sectors, but definitely I'll be taking up this.
Thank you, Mr. Nanda Kishore. That is really very happy to note about talking about efficiency and talking about cost of manufacture. And I think most enterprises, all of us at the factories now, at least in my company, we're spending most of our time in looking at costing sheets. You know, cost of manufacture is so very important, because the margins are very, very thin, competitions are high, and you know, you really don't want to waste, or I would say you really would like to be talking about lean manufacturing. You want to talk about scaling up with, you know, least costs. You're really talking about efficiencies of scale, and you're really talking about quick turnaround times. And all this is possible only when you have an eye on it, and I'm glad that the state government is really having a very focused eye on that. And he also talked about the basic infrastructure, the plug-in operate kind of an infrastructure that's already available for MSMEs to work from. And
so our own Dixon is testimony for that. Actually, they have taken 4 ready-made infrastructure sheds in Kadapa. She can vouch for it.
Okay. So yeah, so it's so very interesting to know that. And I was having a conversation with Sanjay over lunch, and I was saying, satellite, you're into satellite manufacture, how are you going to manage raw materials? Because we know numbers are small, you know, you don't get raw materials easily. And then he said, no, it's all possible. And so these are barriers which we've all been, thinking that it's difficult to build satellites in a small enterprise. I mean, starting as a small enterprise, I'm sure it's grown big. But, but it is possible to be Atmanirbhar and to be able to have a Make in India product. And that's what is very nice. I'll ask Sanjay to share that extra bit about how do you make it Make in India? How is it possible for you to, look at manufacturing and scaling up your business?
Sure. It's a very interesting question. So I'm just trying to think of some case study that I can probably talk about. Okay, let's probably start with where Mr. Nanda Kishore left. With the collaboration with the Indian Navy, right? I think there's a new framework that's coming out where under Make 2 or Make 1 program, where about several devices they want the local ecosystem to manufacture, and if there's an industry that can manufacture, they're happy to pick it up and employ as part of their naval requirements. So largely for space and strategic electronics, the infrastructure is very similar. So you could assume that about 70 to 80% of the testing infrastructure will be similar. When you go to space, probably there is 20% extra testing infrastructure that would be required. But if you're doing something for on Earth, it would cost you X. When you're building something for space, sometimes the cost can be about 1000x, or it's on a much higher figure. So let's talk something very specific. We as Dhruva Space are today building space grade solar panels. There are several companies in the country who build ground-based solar panels, right? Now these ground-based solar panels, the cells have an efficiency of anywhere between 15 to 18%, 22% tops. But for space, the cell efficiency is anywhere between 29 and 32%. 1 watt of power costs roughly about $1,000. So, if you could just establish infrastructure that can support manufacturing of space-grade solar panels in the country, that itself can generate so much amount of revenue that, your investment can be recovered in a short period of time. I just want to talk real specific so that you could get an idea. So roughly if you're investing about 200 crores into common infrastructure in the country, especially in AP, the same 200 crores can attract a lot of Western companies to come to Andhra Pradesh and utilize that infrastructure for manufacturing satellites for the global market. And that would in itself over a period of time, become self-sustainable. I hope that answers.
Yeah, I think it does, because it kind of shows the opportunities that are there in this sector. Again, I'm going to go back from opportunities to having people who will support, building those opportunities. And I'll request Poornima to share, what are the different, there is so many kinds of skill sets that are required for an electronic industry. It's a huge umbrella. And every technology has its own in-depth requirement of skills. So how does a state government meet this kind of requirement, and what needs to be done to build those?
Thanks, Uma. I think one of the most important things that the government can look at is the case study of Taiwan and replicate it. And I think that's a phenomenally successful story. So more than 40 years ago, what Taiwan decided was to become a hub for electronics manufacturing. So they went to the Bay Area, or rather they went to the US and picked up this guy called Dr. Morris Chang, who used to be working in Texas Instruments, and brought him back to set up the first fab in Taiwan. He was 51 years old, and today, I mean, he's regarded as a national treasure in Taiwan. But this is one man who changed the story of semicon manufacturing and fabs. When they systematically over time have gone back to the US and brought back their national talent who have studied at Ivy League universities, brought them back to nurture, foster, and build industry in the country. So if the state is looking at getting talent and increasing employment, one of the first things is to involve industry in the creation of curriculum and to set up centers of excellence along with industry. Often curriculum is very divorced from the realities of the job. It's not about getting only electronics engineers. In manufacturing, you need chemical engineers, you need material scientists, you need computer science, you need a lot of the others, you need physicists, you need chemists, you need chemical guys. So these are various areas. I feel very sad when I see engineering colleges say only electronics and computer science seats are getting filled and the others are not getting filled. It's because we're not creating the right opportunities for these students. If you're going to look at electronics, whether it's design or manufacturing, all of them are going to be needed. So it's a wonderful opportunity. The state talks of 30 centers for skill development. You already have existing ITIs and polytechnics with an outdated curriculum. Upgrade that curriculum. The physical infrastructure is there. Lower income group students are growing there. Train them to work for these, and then industry can come here. You don't have to get talent from other states. Local talent will get jobs. So I think there's a lot that can happen with a progressive policy like this, but we need to put people first. Business is about people and creating jobs. And this opportunity is there for AP, and it should take this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Poornima. And I think I'll come to the last question to Sanjay, and then I'll open it out with one or two Q&A so that you get some time out of this panel. So here we have this entire ecosystem, but my question to you, Sanjay, is, let's say I'm an entrepreneur who wants to set up an enterprise. So what are the schemes that I can look at? Where is it that I can get some support, either from Government of India or the state government, that will actually help me take my business forward?
Sure, Uma, thank you. So when we talked about manufacturing of $300 billion, total ESDM of $400 billion, every sector is going to grow. In automotive, we are going to witness electric vehicle is the next big thing happening. In mobile phone, already there is a huge growth. In consumer electronics, there is a huge growth. Smart city projects are going to drive huge demand for electronics. And in telecommunication, we are going to migrate from 4G to 5G. So everyone is very confident that these numbers are real. We are going to achieve that. Now the question is how we can build a high value added manufacturing ecosystem. Not only manufacturing, but high value added. And for that, if 40% value of any electronic product is component, our top priority should be building a component manufacturing in India. Today, more than 90% or 95% components are imported in India. So if we look at any component ecosystem of electronics, semiconductor is a major portion. And government recently announced 3 manufacturing policies for semiconductor. First is CMOS semiconductor wafer fab, second is a display wafer fab, and third is a compound semiconductor policy. So these are the 3 policies government has announced for semiconductor manufacturing. For passive components like capacitors, resistors, inductors, transformers, optocouplers, there is a wonderful policy called SPECS by Ministry of Electronics. Under SPECS program, one is going to get 25% incentive of the capex investment for component manufacturing. In CMOS wafer fab, government is going to fund 50% of the investment goes into semiconductor wafer fab. In display wafer fab also, government is going to support 50%, and in compound semiconductor, 30%. So there are policies to support and building a component ecosystem. That is one part of the story. The next big value of any electronics product is into IP and technology. So how we can create a startup ecosystem, successful startup ecosystem, so that we can create electronic product IP as well as semiconductor VLSI chip design IP. Now, we have great talent, but that talent today working in global companies, in their captive design center. So we get jobs, but the IP value get recognized at the global companies. Same way our services company, again we get jobs, but we do product development and chip development, again for global companies. So now there is a need that this talent, what we have, we should support them to create Indian companies so that design happens in India, both semiconductor chip design as well as electronic product design. And so that we can start recognizing that 30-40% value of IP technology in India. So on one hand, once we create component ecosystem, on other hand, once we start developing IP in India, I think that is the only solution to develop the high value added ecosystem for electronics. And we must focus that. Coming to my last point, AP state has come out with one of the best electronics manufacturing policy. I have seen policies of various states. Andhra Pradesh government policy is one of the best. You are already, Sri City is a great cluster. Now you are going to have Kadapa, you are going to have Tirupati, you are going to have Chittoor. So EMC 2.0, that is Electronics Manufacturing Cluster 2.0, I think Andhra Pradesh has already taken a lead. So infrastructure is going to get created. I think we have to attract Indian companies and global companies. And one advice, sir, for attracting global companies, we should form a desk in countries like Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, because those companies are now hungry to come to India for manufacturing, as well as they are going to treat India as a manufacturing hub for Middle East and Africa. So I think AP government should proactively form a desk into these three countries and attract those industries in AP state. That is one. Secondly, compound semiconductor is a very big opportunity. Let CMOS wafer fab or display wafer fab go to other state, but compound semiconductor like sensors, your photonics, your ATMPs, OSAT, those industries must come to AP state. We should work towards that. So let's take a aim, guys, that if $400 billion is going to be electronics industry by 2026, let's aim that in AP we create a $50 billion industry for electronics. And that's where we will close this session.
Yeah,
Thank you.
On that note, I think it's a very positive note that we're all contributing to that $400 billion economy in 2026. If there are any questions, if you have to any of the panelists, we can take them. Otherwise, I know they're running behind time, so if there's any questions from the audience?
Check. Are you going to ask the question? No. So, yeah, please, not political, extremely non-controversial. So, everybody raise the hands when I count to you. Yeah.
Sir, my question is to Sanjeev, sir. Sir, you say, you've told about, the biggest challenge to production is in value addition. So, when you started off, you said so. So, what can the manufacturing sectors, the companies in these sector, do in order to add value, actually add value? What can be done differently so that this challenge is overcome?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, any electronic product, the value depends on three things. Firstly, your component around 40%, IP technology is around 40%, and your EMS activity or manufacturing activity gives you only 10 to 15% of value recognition. Today what's happening, our entire focus is only on manufacturing. We are setting up SMT lines, we are creating manufacturing EMS plants, but we are importing complete kit from some global company and doing the assembly work. And we end up with 10 to 15% value addition. So to answer your question, if you design a product in India, if you at least start sourcing some components from India, whichever are possible, so we can step by step migrate of growing value addition from 15 to 30, 30 to 40. It is not going to happen overnight, but with semiconductor fabs coming to India, with passive component going to get manufactured, I think eventually we have to reach to a level where at least 50% value is recognized in India.
And to further answer that question, I'll have Sanjay to give an example from his own experience.
Okay, on satellites and launch vehicles, there's a system called a hold down release mechanism. Okay, it's essentially holding and then releasing, actuating. So the springs are manufactured in the country. The latch is manufactured in the country. The coating is manufactured in the country. A value addition is combining all of them and making a product. Today, most of these hold down release mechanisms are imported and they cost a lot of money. Now, all of this is available in the country in different places. So you package it and you're not just substituting domestic requirements, but it also gives you a provision to sell globally.
And also, I think we are at that time and day and age where we're able to find that little small enterprise somewhere near Lucknow in a little town manufacturing one particular press component whom we are able to get and use it. There was a time when we couldn't reach out to such people. They had their expertise, but we had no connect. And I think we are at that stage where we can really have a Make in India product, build, add, value add, and I'm sure this is the way to go. And thank you so very much once again to Hans and Bizzbuzz Business Group for inviting us
We
along
have,
with the World Trade Center.
we have
Thank
more
you very much.
questions.
Oh, we have one more?
Yeah, we have. So, here.
Happy evening, sir. Sir, recently the central government announced the semiconductor policy to promote manufacturing of semiconductors in the country. As per notification, the government will provide 50% of the cost for setting up semiconductors and to display the fab units. Sir, did you take any advantage of this and ordered or invited any companies manufacturing of the semiconductors in Andhra Pradesh? Sir, my question to Nanda Kishore sir.
Obviously, yes, Andy, but see, fab manufacturing, the initial upfront investment cost runs into crores and crores of rupees. If somebody comes forward to invest that amount of money, definitely. See, from the government side, we are open. 100% we don't have any qualms about that, but there are hardly, as sir said, some 3 or 4 big semiconductor industries that manufacturing fabs and all. So getting that kind of investment is, for any state, actually it is welcome change. And that requires water quantities and power quantities in a huge numbers, but government of AP is ready to give that, yes.
Thank you.
More questions? Kindly raise the hand. I think that's about it, madam. Yeah, so there's a memento of gratification, a token of appreciation for all the eminent panelists and also the moderator here, requesting our team to please present the mementos for the esteemed panelists on the dais. A huge round of applause for our moderator, Uma Reddy Garu, MD of High Tech Magnetics. I think she did a very fabulous job as a session chair and addressed all the questions that is needed in the current state. Thanks to our panelist, Sanjeev Keskar, sir, the CEO of Arvind Consultancies. Also, thanks to Nanda Kishore Reddy, sir, our MD, APTS Group. He has patiently run us through a lot of information today and also has answered all the Q&As. And thanks to Poornima Shenoy ji, the CEO of Hummingbird Advisors. Also, thank you to Mr. Sanjay Nekkanti, the co-founder of Dhruva Aerospace. Also, post this requesting panelists and the session chair to pose for a photo. Hans, in association with World Trade Center, Visakhapatnam, Bizzbuzz Business Conclave has successfully completed the second session, which was about electronics. We also have witnessed information and technology. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, 2 successful panel discussion for the day is over. And as we enter into the third session, which is about tourism, We will leave for a short coffee break and we will be back in a span of 10 to 15 minutes. We will gather back by 4:15 p.m. without any delay. We are going to strictly start by 4:15. Don't want to keep the participants here waiting. We also already have our panelists for the next session ready.